Hey guys, it's Matt LaRosiere with Firearms Policy Coalition bringing you another weekly update, just to make sure that you guys have all of the latest information on everything affecting your right to keep and bear arms. Now, it's been a busy week, so let's get straight into it. In Virginia, we had something this week that shows you that a bill isn't dead until the final bell calls. Virginia House Bill 961 passed through the House Public Safety Committee this week. That day, there was so many firearms rights supporters that they had to actually be ordered out of the room. When the committee passed this measure, there was a lot of commotion going on there. I guess a lot of people didn't think this was going to go through. So this, along with a host of other anti-gun bills, were passed, and you can find more information on the write-up for this week's report. But the assault weapons bill covers firearms with a fixed capacity of 12 or more rounds, and then everything else, is about a point system, features tests, collapsible stock pistol grips, and that sort of thing when it comes to detachable magazines. This is a huge problem. Now, it is just through one stage of the process. There are a lot of steps that this has to go through, and there's a lot of challenges, but they're not insurmountable. So we need to really keep our guard up on this one and watch it very closely. Next up this week, we had a new ghost gun released, a upgraded Tech 9 3D printable lower receiver. Now, we talk a lot about these things here because, honestly, if we are going to have a fundamental individual right to keep and bear arms, we're strongly of the opinion that includes a right to make them yourself. There's no logic that says if you have a right to have, keep and bear, you don't have the right to make. That's like limiting, your First Amendment expression to a printing press. And speaking of First Amendment, this fight is all about the First Amendment because we're dealing, especially with 3D printing, with files, instructions, downloads, recipes, if you will, which are unquestionably First Amendment protected activity. Now, people on the anti-gun side will say, well, no, that's not First Amendment conduct, that's not this, that's not that. So what they did with this new release, which I have one right here, is made this unquestionably a piece of performance art. This is dedicated in large part to Pennsylvania Attorney General Josh Shapiro, who has fought tirelessly to curtail the First and Second Amendment rights of Pennsylvanians. And it has a rendition of his face on one side with anime eyes, hearts all over it, printed in hot pink. We love you, Josh Shapiro. Serial number with a C1. Basically, this is unquestionably a piece of performance art. And you can check out Control Pew online. There was a big release this week with a video, a song was made to celebrate the occasion, a custom t-shirt. We'll have links to all that stuff in the story, which again, you can get a link to the story in the description or just check out firearmspolicy.org and click news. But this is just really fantastic. I mean, I know that we don't often see Tech 9s that look like this. And not only is it a piece of performance art, there's also an upgrade. It holds a spare magazine in the grip. So that's a pretty neat little feature. Really cool. I really recommend you guys check out the video. It's really interesting stuff. Over in Hawaii, the state legislature is responding to the deaths of 2 police officers last month in a horrible eviction gone wrong by pushing some legislation. On the table is a ban on .50 caliber machine guns, a permit requirement for the purchase of ammunition, and of course, a ban on having a firearm without a serial number, or AKA a ghost gun ban, going after our buddies here. Now you might be asking, were the officers killed with a .50 caliber machine gun? Well, no. Well, then that might cause you to ask, well, what does any of this have to do with this tragedy that purportedly spurred this push? I think this is just another incident where gun controllers, lawmakers, cannot let a tragedy go to waste. Look, you have to ask yourself, if the laws you put in place would not have prevented the crime that happened, it's not a justifiable response, especially not when it results in the curtailment of individual liberty. Over in the other notoriously sunny state, my home country of Florida, the state Supreme Court has recently reviewed the proposed ballot language for an assault weapons ban proposition. This would be a constitutional amendment to ban assault weapons in the state of Florida. Now, this initiative has been in the works for a while, since 2018. It didn't have enough signatures to get in the ballot in 18, didn't have enough signatures to get in the ballot this time in 20, and they're trying again for 2022. And these signatures tend to carry over, so this isn't something we can just forget about. The Supreme Court looked at the proposed ballot language and basically said, it's prohibitively vague. You aren't really sure what weapons are covered. You're not sure whether the weapons are grandfathered or just the owner. The proponents of the bill would say, no. Basically, if you have that weapon, you can't give it to somebody else. It wouldn't be like the federal assault weapon grandfathering. But this wasn't clear in the ballot language. It's also not terribly clear in the law itself in a lot of ways. So we'll see what happens. Again, this is pretty far on the horizon, but especially if you're in Florida, this is something to keep an eye on. The initiative would only need 60% if it goes on the ballot, and we have a history in this state of pretty much just passing whatever goes on there. Going further here in Florida, Florida Carry Inc., a state gun rights group, has issued an open letter to police chiefs in the state, basically saying, hey, stop it. Stop infringing our rights. They list about a dozen instances where police officers in the state of Florida egregiously violated the rights of gun owners, and also listed a bunch of procedures and practices in place in many Florida districts that are unquestionably infringements of our rights. I think this is awesome. It's a lot of times people have a hard time actually trying to hold law enforcement accountable. I don't know what's behind that, whether it's fear or whether it's, a political signaling, but the fact is, they're who we deal with on a day-to-day basis. When there's new laws, that's where it comes through. So it's important to be on the clear and level with them. And Florida Carry has a pretty clear and level promise for them. If you don't stop it, we're going to sue you a lot. I like the way that sounds. And now federally, ATF is accepting public comments on their changes to the Form 4473. Anyone who's ever bought a gun from a dealer will know the Form 4473 is what you fill out to have a firearm transferred to you. Now, there's a few changes, but most striking is the addition of a non-binary sex option. Up until now, ATF only had male or female on the sex selection, and if you didn't pick one, they considered it a reason to deny the transfer to you. Now, there are tons of people who are born intersex or who are trans or otherwise non-binary, and in fact, there's a lot of states that issue non-binary driver licenses. And when the point of the 4473 is to identify somebody, it doesn't make sense to deny a transfer to have them select something that doesn't apply to them. It just doesn't. This is a good step. However, I ask, why are you asking that at all? What does the sex matter? You have more than enough information to identify the transferee everywhere else in the 4473. So it doesn't make sense, especially if you're going to be denying people based on this. However, I'm really happy to see that those people, those members of our community, are going to be able to buy firearms without being harassed or embarrassed into picking something that they don't feel represents them. So that's a good move, no matter who you are. The Supreme Court of Illinois this week recognized gun ownership as a civil right for purposes of having rights restored after the expungement of a felony. This is a big deal for people living in the state who have had their convictions expunged, supposedly restoring them, but been denied their right to purchase a firearm. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court ruling, while good, it reversed an even broader ruling finding the state and federal statute unconstitutional as applied to the petitioner, somebody who had committed a felony ages ago and had it expunged only to be denied their civil rights. Now, again, progress is progress, and we're happy to see it. Now, unfortunately, in Minnesota, their state Supreme Court came to an opposite result when they ruled that a man who had his felony from over a quarter century ago expunged did not get his rights to keep and bear arms back. Using some pretty interesting logic, again, you can read more about this in the text story. The court basically reasoned that although your conviction was expunged under state law, it doesn't quite meet the federal definition of expungement, and so, no, you don't get your gun rights back. Well, anyway, that's it for this week, guys. There was more we couldn't cover in video, so again, check out firearmspolicy.org, click on news. If you want to check out our merch, our t-shirts, check out fpcgear.com. But until next time, I've been Matt LaRosiere with Firearms Policy Coalition, where we keep up the fight for all of your rights all the time, and I'll see you real soon.